A single mother, a life-threatening diagnosis, and an impossible choice, until Cristiano Ronaldo steps in with a gesture that changes everything. This is the story of kindness, hope, and a community inspired to save lives. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the small cafe, but Sofia Mendes barely noticed. She stood behind the counter, her hands moving on autopilot as she poured yet another cup of espresso for a waiting customer. Her mind wasn't in the bustling cafe, it was in the cramped hospital room from the night before, replaying the doctor's solemn words like a broken record. Miguel's condition is worsening. Without surgery, he doesn't have much time. Sofia had nodded, her throat too tight to speak, clutching her purse as though it could somehow magically hold the tens of thousands of euros she needed. But it didn't. All it held were a few loose bills, a tattered photograph of Miguel, and the crushing weight of her helplessness. The faint chime of the cafe door snapped her back to the present. Sofia turned to greet the new customer, forcing a smile onto her face. The smile didn't reach her eyes, which carried the weariness of sleepless nights and the quiet desperation of a mother fighting for her child. As the morning rush subsided, Sofia stole a moment to check her phone. A notification blinked. Fundraiser for Miguel's heart surgery. Her neighbor Anna had set it up the day before, promising to help rally the community. Sofia's heart warmed briefly, but the optimism was fleeting. The fundraiser had barely reached 500 euros, a far cry from the 70,000 euros needed. At that moment, the door swung open and Miguel walked in, his school backpack slung over one shoulder. The sunlight caught his unruly dark curls, and his face lit up when he saw her. "May," he called out, his voice as bright as his smile. Sofia's heart ached as she crouched to hug him. Miguel didn't know how serious his condition was. She had told him only that he needed a special doctor. He didn't understand the battle she was fighting behind the scenes, nor did he need to. "How was school today?" she asked, smoothing his hair. "I scored a goal at recess." "Just like Ronaldo," Miguel said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Sofia smiled, but her throat tightened. Football was Miguel's passion. He idolized Cristiano Ronaldo, even taping a picture of the football star to his bedroom wall. Miguel dreamed of playing professionally one day, and Sofia often pretended to believe it could happen. But deep down, she feared the worst, that her son might never see another birthday, let alone play on a field. As Miguel chattered about his day, Sofia's resolve hardened. She would find a way to save him. Even if it meant swallowing her pride and asking for help from strangers, she would fight. Because for Miguel, she would do anything. The cafe door chimed again, but this time, Sofia didn't flinch. She tightened her apron, kissed Miguel on the forehead, and stepped back to the counter, ready to face whatever came next. Sofia stood in the cramped living room of her modest apartment, her hands clutching a flyer with trembling fingers. The words "fundraiser for Miguel Mendes" were printed in bold at the top, alongside a photo of her smiling son. Her neighbor, Dona Isabel, had insisted on designing it, refusing to take no for an answer. "You don't fight alone," Isabel had said firmly, her weathered hands squeezing Sofia's shoulder. Now, as Sofia stared at the flyer, she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The idea of asking for help made her stomach twist. She had always been the one to give, offering coffee to the neighborhood mechanic who couldn't pay his tab or babysitting Isabel's grandkids when she needed a break. But today, she was the one in need. The fundraiser was held in the town square, a humble gathering of friends, neighbors, and strangers drawn together by compassion. Plastic tables lined the cobblestone plaza, laden with homemade pastries, hand-knitted scarves, and trinkets donated by the community. Children darted between the tables, laughing, their innocence a sharp contrast to the weight of the day. Sofia stood near the corner, nervously adjusting her apron as she helped Isabel arrange pastries. Miguel sat nearby, his small frame dwarfed by an old folding chair. Despite his pale complexion, his eyes sparkled as he chatted with a group of other children. To him, this was just a fun event. He didn't understand the gravity of why they were all here, and Sofia intended to keep it that way. Throughout the day, people came to donate. A young man handed over a crumpled bill, explaining that he'd skipped lunch for a week to save the money. An elderly woman placed a small jar of coins on the table, murmuring, "It's not much, but it's from the heart." Each act of kindness chipped away at Sophia's despair, filling her with equal parts gratitude and hope. By late afternoon, Isabel climbed onto a makeshift stage, her voice loud and unwavering as she thanked everyone for their contributions. "This is what community means," she declared, waving the microphone in one hand. "When one of us falls, we lift them up." The crowd cheered, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself to smile. Yet, when Isabel announced the total amount raised, Sophia's heart sank. It was an incredible effort, more than she'd dared to hope for, but still far short of the amount needed for Miguel's surgery. As the crowd began to disperse, Sophia sat beside Miguel, holding his hand. She fought back tears, unwilling to let him see her break. "Did we do it, Mama?" he asked, his voice soft and hopeful. "Almost, meu anjo," she whispered, kissing his forehead. Almost. Little did she know, this small act of collective kindness would soon set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. The sun had barely risen over Lisbon, but the city was already alive. Tourists filled the narrow cobblestone streets, their chatter mingling with the aroma of fresh pastéis de nata from street-side bakeries. In a luxury hotel overlooking the Tagus River, Cristiano Ronaldo stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, sipping a protein shake. His gaze drifted toward the bustling city below, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Today, he was scheduled to attend a charity event, a cause close to his heart. For Ronaldo, these events were more than public appearances. They were a chance to give back, a way to remember his roots in Madeira, where he had once dreamed of a better life. Despite his fame and fortune, he carried the weight of knowing that not everyone had the opportunities he did. As he prepared to leave, a member of his PR team approached him, holding a tablet. "Cristiano, there's something you should see." He frowned slightly, but nodded. The screen displayed a local news clip. It showed a woman, exhausted but determined, sitting in a tiny cafe. Beside her was a young boy with wide eyes and a shy smile. The journalist narrated their story. Miguel, only 8 years old, was battling a rare heart condition. His mother, Sophia, had been tirelessly working to raise funds for his life-saving surgery. The community had tried to help, but their efforts had fallen short. Ronaldo's eyes softened as he watched Miguel in the video, clutching a worn football in his hands. The boy's smile faltered only briefly when the journalist mentioned the cost of the surgery. "He reminds me of myself," Ronaldo murmured. His team member glanced at him. "The story is going viral on social media. People are sharing it, hoping someone will step in." Ronaldo set the tablet down and leaned against the table, his jaw tightening. He thought of his own mother, working long hours to support her family, and the sacrifices she had made. He thought of the countless children he had met through his foundation, children whose lives had been transformed by acts of kindness. Without hesitation, he straightened and turned to his assistant. "Contact the hospital. I'll cover the costs for the surgery. Make sure they know to proceed immediately." The assistant nodded, already typing furiously on her phone. Ronaldo's resolve deepened. "And arrange a meeting with them. I want to meet Miguel and his mother personally." As the day progressed, news of Ronaldo's decision began to circulate. Social media erupted with praise for the footballer's generosity, and Sophia, still working her shift at the cafe, received a call that left her trembling. By the time Ronaldo left for the charity event, he was no longer just a footballer or a celebrity. To Miguel and Sophia, he was a lifeline, a symbol of hope at the moment they needed it most. The phone rang in the tiny, dimly lit apartment as Sophia stood by the sink, scrubbing plates with robotic motions. It was late, and Miguel had just fallen asleep on the worn couch with his favorite football tucked under his arm. Sophia's shoulders sagged under the weight of another failed day. The fundraiser at the cafe had ended with kind smiles, but far too few donations. Her heart felt heavier than ever, each ring of the phone striking a hollow echo in her chest. "Hello," she answered, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Good evening. May I speak with Sofia Mendez?" The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "This is Sophia," she replied cautiously, setting the plate down and drying her hands. "This is Helena from Cristiano Ronaldo's foundation. Mr. Ronaldo came across the story about your son, Miguel, and his need for urgent surgery. He has decided to cover all expenses for the procedure, as well as the post-operative care." Sophia froze. The words hung in the air, incomprehensible, like a dream she didn't dare believe was real. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman on the line repeated the message, her tone warm and empathetic. "Mr. Ronaldo was deeply moved by your story. He wants to ensure Miguel receives the care he needs. Everything will be taken care of." Sophia's legs gave way, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. Tears streamed down her face, silent at first, then giving way to deep, shaking sobs. She covered her mouth, afraid to wake Miguel, but the sheer weight of relief overwhelmed her. Is this real?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Ms. Mendez. Mr. Ronaldo's team will coordinate with the hospital in Lisbon to arrange everything. You'll receive all the details tomorrow." "Thank you," Sophia gasped, clutching the phone as though it were a lifeline. "Please, thank him for me. I don't know how to." "There's no need to thank him," Helena said kindly. "He believes no child should suffer because of circumstances beyond their control." Miguel's story touched his heart. He's happy to help. When the call ended, Sophia sat in stunned silence. Her tears kept flowing, this time a release of months of tension and fear. She looked over at Miguel, who stirred slightly but didn't wake, his face peaceful. Sliding to her knees beside him, she stroked his curly hair. "You're going to be okay, meu amor," she whispered. "Someone out there cares for you, as much as I do. Someone with the power to make a miracle happen." For the first time in months, Sophia felt the crushing weight on her chest begin to lift. The darkness that had loomed over her days gave way to a glimmer of light. Help had arrived, not from the heavens, but from a man who had risen from humble beginnings and never forgotten the power of compassion. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic, its pale walls bathed in the dim glow of late afternoon sunlight. Sophia sat by Miguel's bed, holding his small hand in hers, her thumb tracing slow, soothing circles over his fragile fingers. Miguel was dozing off, a soft smile on his face despite the 4 taped to his arm. He didn't yet know the gravity of the surgery awaiting him, just that a kind man had made it possible. A sudden knock on the door startled Sophia. She glanced up, expecting a nurse, but her heart skipped a beat as Cristiano Ronaldo stepped into the room. Dressed simply in a navy sweater and jeans, he carried an air of calm authority. Despite his towering frame and global fame, he moved with an approachable warmth, his face softening into a smile as he saw the little boy lying on the bed. "Boa tarde," Ronaldo said gently, his voice rich and steady. "May I come in?" Sophia shot to her feet, her throat tight with disbelief. Of course," she stammered, trying to compose herself. "Mr. Ronaldo, thank you doesn't even begin to cover it." He held up a hand, stopping her. "Please call me Cristiano," he said, his smile widening. "And there's no need to thank me. I'm just glad I can help." Miguel stirred at the sound of Ronaldo's voice, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw who was standing by his bed, his mouth dropped open, and he let out a gasp. "Cristiano Ronaldo?" he whispered, his voice tinged with awe. Ronaldo crouched down beside the bed, his eyes level with Miguel's. "The one and only," he said with a wink. "And you must be Miguel, the brave footballer everyone's been telling me about." Miguel's cheeks flushed as he nodded shyly. "You know about me?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement. "Of course," Ronaldo replied. "I heard you're a fighter just like me. And I also heard you love football. Is that true?" Miguel nodded vigorously, his eyes lighting up. "One day, I want to play for Portugal, just like you," he said, his voice filling the small room with a determined energy. Ronaldo grinned and placed a reassuring hand on Miguel's shoulder. "Then you have to promise me something," he said. "Promise me you'll rest, get strong, and focus on getting better." Because the national team is going to need you one day. Miguel's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as he whispered, I promise. Sophia watched the exchange, her heart swelling with gratitude. She cleared her throat, her voice breaking as she spoke. I don't know how to thank you, Cristiano. You've given my son a second chance. Ronaldo stood and turned to her, his gaze steady and sincere. I know what it's like to come from nothing, he said. And I know what it means to be given a chance. Helping Miguel is the least I can do. Before leaving, Ronaldo pulled a jersey from a small bag he carried, his signature scrawled across the front. This is for you, Miguel, he said, handing it to the boy. Keep it as a reminder that dreams can come true. As Ronaldo left the room, Sophia and Miguel sat in stunned silence, the weight of his kindness settling over them. For the first time in weeks, hope felt tangible, like the sunlight breaking through the cracks in the hospital blinds. The hospital waiting room buzzed with quiet tension, punctuated by the rhythmic ticking of a clock on the wall. Sophia sat on the edge of a worn plastic chair, her fingers entwined in a silent prayer. She had barely slept in days, her mind consumed by worry and gratitude in equal measure. Miguel, her brave, bright-eyed boy, was in surgery. His life now rested in the hands of skilled doctors and the unimaginable kindness of a man she'd never dreamed of meeting. Across from her, a group of nurses whispered, stealing glances toward the private wing. Ronaldo's presence in the hospital had stirred excitement among staff and patients alike, but for Sophia, it wasn't about the fame. It was about what his generosity meant, a second chance for her son, a lifeline when she had been drowning in despair. The doors to the operating room opened with a soft hiss, and a doctor in scrubs emerged, his face calm but unreadable. Sophia shot to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The surgery was a success, the doctor said with a reassuring smile. Miguel is stable and recovering well. You can see him shortly. Sophia's knees nearly buckled as relief washed over her. Tears streamed down her face, and she clasped the doctor's hands, mumbling words of gratitude that barely made it past her sobs. Not long after, she was led to Miguel's room. He lay on the bed, small and fragile against the stark white sheets, but his chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing those familiar brown eyes that always seemed to hold the world's wonder. Mom, he croaked, his voice weak, but filled with the same optimism that had kept Sophia going. Am I okay now? Yes, baby, Sophia whispered, stroking his curls. You're going to be just fine. Behind her, a gentle knock on the door drew her attention. She turned to see Ronaldo, dressed casually in a crisp white shirt and jeans, holding a small football in his hand. His presence seemed to light up the room, not with the aura of a superstar but with the warmth of someone who truly cared. May I come in? He asked softly. Sophia nodded, unable to find her voice. Miguel's eyes widened, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Cristiano Ronaldo? He whispered, awe mixing with disbelief. Ronaldo smiled and sat on the edge of the bed. That's me. I heard you're a fighter, Miguel. You've got the heart of a champion. Miguel's face lit up, and for the first time in days, Sophia saw her son smile, a real, joyous smile that made her heart swell. Ronaldo handed him the football, signed with a simple message, never stop dreaming. CR 7-inch. Thank you, Miguel whispered, clutching the ball like it was a treasure. As Ronaldo turned to leave, he placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. You've raised an incredible boy, he said. And remember, kindness has a way of coming full circle. Sophia nodded, her heart full. For the first time in what felt like forever, hope had been restored. The morning light streamed through the hospital windows, bathing Miguel's room in a warm glow. Sophia sat by his bedside, her fingers gently brushing through his dark curls as he slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The faint beep of the heart monitor was no longer a sound of worry, but one of hope. The surgery had been a success, and Miguel's color had returned, a rosy hue replacing the pale, ashen look that had haunted her dreams. A knock at the door stirred Sophia from her thoughts. It was the nurse carrying a small package. This came for Miguel, she said with a smile, handing Sophia a neatly wrapped box with Ronaldo's unmistakable signature scrawled across the card. Sophia opened it carefully, her breath catching as she revealed a pristine jersey, signed with the words, "To Miguel, stay strong and keep chasing your dreams. Love, Ronaldo." Beneath it was a handwritten letter. "Dear Miguel," it began, "you're one of the strongest kids I've ever met. Remember, it's not the size of the player, but the size of the heart that wins the game. Get well soon. I'll be cheering for you when you step onto the field someday." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she read. Miguel stirred awake, his face lighting up when he saw the jersey. "Is this from him?" he whispered, his voice still weak, but filled with awe. Sophia nodded, handing him the jersey. He clutched it to his chest as if it were a treasure. "One day," he said, his eyes shining with determination, "I'll be like him, Mama. I'll play football and help kids too." Word of Ronaldo's gesture spread quickly, igniting a wave of kindness across the community. Inspired by his act, neighbors who had once pooled their small savings to help Miguel began organizing larger charity drives for other families in need. Local businesses pledged donations, and even strangers from distant towns reached out to offer support. Sophia found herself at the center of this growing movement, not as a helpless mother, but as a leader. "We can't stop here," she told a gathering of volunteers at the cafe where she worked. "What Ronaldo did for Miguel gave us hope, but there are so many others who need the same chance." The first fundraiser they organized after Miguel's recovery raised enough to help another family pay for a critical surgery. Sophia watched as the mother of that child wept with the same gratitude she had once felt, and it solidified her resolve to keep going. Weeks later, Miguel stood on a small soccer field near their home, kicking a ball with his friends. His laugh rang out, vibrant and carefree. Sophia sat on a bench, Ronaldo's letter folded neatly in her pocket, watching her son come alive again. The ripple had started with one act of kindness, but it would not end there. Ronaldo's generosity had inspired not just one life, but an entire community to believe in the power of giving. And as Miguel turned and waved at her, his jersey catching the sunlight, Sophia knew that their story was far from over. It had only just begun. Subscribe to our channel for soul-stirring stories.